The 17th of April, 12:41 p.m., the Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. Gina, how are you holding up? I'm starting to feel quite warmly towards her frequent cold shoulders now.
Ginny! Are you alright? Why aren't you saying anything?
What's the point, eh? Why go to all this trouble and fight so hard for the likes of me?
What?
Well, you saw it. That picture. What picture?
Oh, you mean this? The photograph taken by Hurley's red-handed recorder.
Also, Gina, we're friends. Of course we're gonna help you.
Well, I didn't think it would have captured a scene like this, that's for sure.
It's hopeless. Anyone who sees that's going to think I did it, ain't they? Well, I won't pretend it wasn't a bit of a shock when the prosecution first presented it to the court. Surely you gotta have your doubts about me now. You can't think I'm innocent. Of course I can.
Jeannie, why don't you talk to us? Tell us what really happened that night.
Huh?
Runa's cleverly managed to piece together a lot of new information, but still, we'd really like to hear it from you.
All right, then. It was after we had that dinner together at your place, right, Iris? Then we all had a chat up in your office, didn't we? Yes, I remember. After that, I just couldn't get to sleep. So I slipped out and went down the street to the 2-1, to Winniebank's place. I had to know if Iris's story was there or not. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Oh, I love this Remnants track so much. I don't know what it's about or nothing, but if you ask me, there's something in it that Sholmes didn't like. Something what he don't want people reading. So that's why he lied to Iris about sticking it in lug with Windybank for safekeeping. At least that's what I thought at the time. So you broke into Windybank's. I just had to know if it was there or not. I mean, I had no idea all of that was gonna kick off, did I? I struck the lock and snuck inside. It was dark as you like in there. So I gave the oil lamp on the counter a bit of wick, and that's when... What do you think you're doing? I nearly died, I did. The next thing I knew... I grabbed the gun off the counter and was waving it in the air like... I don't know what. Oh, you're the girl who was in here this afternoon. I didn't think pickpockets went in for armed robbery. The mantle script. Have you got it here? Did Sholmes leave a load of papers with you? A story? I beg your pardon? The Hound of the... something or other. If it's here, I want to see it. I'm sorry, young lady, but I'd sooner die than relinquish an article belonging to one of my customers. Oh, I don't want it. What would I do with it anyway? I just want to see it's here. That's all. Oh, you want to see it, do you? I want to know if Sholmes really pawned it here or not. Please, just let me see it and I'll go. Oh, very well then. But for pity's sake, stop waving my gun around, would you? So then the old cove unlocked the storeroom door, and we both went inside. And it was there, all right. The mantle script. Sholmes weren't lying after all.
You did all that just to check for me, Ginny.
Anyway, then there was a bit of a kick-up out in the main bit of the shop. The Skulkin brothers arriving on the scene, yes. What was that noise? Someone's breaking in. Dear me, is there some burglars' convention here tonight that I don't know about? I think I forgot to shut the door behind me. Sorry. I better go and take care of it. Could I possibly have my gun back? Oh, well, I'll come with you and... Now, don't be foolish, young girl. You must stay right here. Don't leave this room under any circumstances. Oh, Windy Bank. Bless your heart. Bless his heart. And with that, he took the gun out of me hands and walked back into the shop. I hung back in the storm, like he said, straining me ears in the dark to hear what was going on. It sounded like they got into a bit of a scrap. I started to think I should help, see? So I was just about to go out the storeroom myself, when... 2 gunshots! I heard a couple of shots go off. 2, I think. Almost at the same time. And then there he was, right at me feet, lying face down on the floor. I was right next to the storeroom door, so I slammed it shut and locked it quick as you like. Because you thought whoever shot Mr. Windybank might come for you. Yeah, so I went to grab the old cove's gun. I figured I'd put up a fight at least. But when I got a better look at him, I knew. Windybank was a goner. I felt funny in the head all of a sudden, kind of dizzy. And after that, I don't remember nothing. That must be when you passed out, Gina. If I hadn't done what I'd done, the old cove might still be alive. Did you tell the police everything you just told us? Of course I did, but they didn't believe a word of it, did they? All they said was, if I kept telling lies, it'd make things even worse for me.
It'll be all right, Jeannie. Don't worry. Just stay strong a little longer. Bruno's about to put the real culprit through the mill.
That cove what was there in the afternoon? That Edgar Benedict. I still remember how he looked at me, like I was nothing. He was there that night. We don't know his real name yet, but I'm convinced that he's involved somehow. Anyway, thank you for telling us what happened, Gina. I appreciate your honesty. You what?
You can leave it all in Runo's capable hands now, Ginny.
Mr. Naraodo. Yes? How come you trust me? I don't get it. I mean, have you forgotten what happened here before? Come on, it was only 2 months ago. Me and McGilded, we told you a whole pack of lies. And you got the betroger off with him, even though he was the killer. No, I could never forget that. Oh, I did what I thought was best at the time, but the pain of that error of judgment doesn't get any easier to bear. Still, don't forget that I also made you a promise. I told you that I'd be on your side to the bitter end, no matter what. But what if I'm lying? You could be working to get another killer off the hook for all you know. I was once in your position, Gina. I was the accused in a trial. You were? Before I left Japan, I was accused of murder. And strange as it might sound, the circumstances of the crime were pretty damning. I was sure that no one would believe it wasn't me who done it.
Oh, Runo.
But there was one person who stood up for me, who believed in me, and was prepared to defend me. My best friend. Ryunosuke, no one believes in you more than I do. Leave this to me. All you need to do is put your faith in me, and I'll do your best. I'll do the best. Ah! No, don't ruin this scene! Sorry, I'm just like, oh, this is very close to, This. Oh no! Oh my god, the lines are almost word for word. Oh my god. Sorry, I ruined the scene. I was so happy I cried. But even then, somewhere inside me, I couldn't help thinking, surely he doesn't really believe in me. Not completely. But I was wrong. As soon as my trial began, it was obvious that he had an absolute, unwavering belief in me. And in turn, I developed an absolute, unwavering belief in him. Since then, I came to realize, if you want someone to believe in you, you have to believe in the other person first.
What are you saying?
I promise you, Gina, that no matter what happens, I'll keep believing in you. So you don't need to worry. I won't let you down.
Even though I'm a diver and a no-good liar.
You're not like McGilded. I know that.
Hey? That's right. You're our friend, Jeannie.
Iris! We know you better than you think. And we've come to the conclusion that you're someone we can trust.
Yes.
That's really all we need to know.
Exactly.
Mr. Naruto, Defendant Gina Lestrade and her legal representatives. Court proceedings are about to resume. Please head into the courtroom immediately. Yes, of course. Thank you. Did you just clip my entire kazoo solo? I've been both a defendant and a defending lawyer in my time. So I knew only too well just how hard it was to put all your faith in another. Oh no! And I also knew just how hard it was to bear the burden of another, putting all their faith in you. This is it at last. The final chapter. The final battle. Wish me luck, Susato-san. And I hope you're watching over me too, partner. Hello, DG Shoes. I think I'm 17th April, 1:41 p.m. The Old Bailey courtroom. Kazooing. I think that's all the kazooing for this case, though.
I hereby call this court to order as we resume the trial of Miss Gina Lestrade. Lord Van Zeeks, have you successfully subpoenaed the witness?
The subpoena was delivered to the communications station where the man works immediately, my lord. However, the heavy rain has delayed the arrival of his carriage, it would seem.
I see. Then let us turn our attention to Inspector Gregson's of the case heard by the court this morning. The glaring omission of the third bullet in your report is a serious blunder, Inspector.
Oh yes, I can only apologize, my lord.
And although the defense's chemical analysis of the blood of the scene, at the scene makes for a compelling argument, I cannot permit such untried methods to be used as evidence in my courtroom.
It's a big mistake to cross Hurley and me. A very big mistake.
My lord, the subpoena witness has just arrived in the building. Thank you, officer. Show him to the stand without delay.
Mr. Edgar Benedict. I didn't expect to be crossing paths with him again so soon. And certainly not like this. I think there's also something strange with some of the testimonies that's coming up. Like, I think one of them I have to pursue when there's nothing going on, I think.
Thank you for complying with the court's subpoena at such short notice, sir.
But of course, my lord. As an upstanding member of London society, it is my pleasure to oblige. Sure, but you really don't want to be here.
Now, kindly state your name and occupation for the record.
Ashley Graydon, Communications Officer. Ashley Graydon! From Rupert Crowgray. Well, Graydon makes sense. Because Crowgray there's a part of his name that means gray or something like that, so that makes sense. But Ashley? Oh, is that what Ashley? Is that why? Mr. Graydon and I both work at London Central Communications Station. Now perhaps somebody would kindly explain what all this is about. You were appraised of the situation by the court officer on your way here, I presume. Yes, I was. Something to do with a murder that took place at a pawnbroker's on Baker Street. And some nonsense about me having been there on the night in question. That is the accusation, indeed. This really is beyond a joke, you know. Oh, suck it up.
Very well. Without further delay, the court will hear your testimony now, Mr. Graydon. You will respond to the accusation made against you under oath.
Gladly, my lord. Gladly. Oh, Cheryl, the accusation. Naturally, I have occasion to make use of pawnbroking services from time to time. But are you seriously suggesting I colluded with these thugs to break into the place on the night of the murder? I have no intention of admitting to such an outrageous accusation, even if certain parties here present claim that my blood was found at the scene. Some Scaramouche detective's homebrew tincture can hardly be taken as serious evidence. Scaramouche.
So you deny the accusations completely, do you?
I must say, I am dismayed. For the highest court in the land to be swayed by this self-professed detective's toy. Can he do the fandangle? I'm sure he can, honestly. I can see him do the fandangle. It was the will of the jury, and our great British justice system demands that the jury's will is upheld. And then it would seem we have the misfortune of a most inept assembly of jurors today. By golly! How long am I expected to be detained here?
If, following the defense's cross-examination, your involvement in this matter has not been established, you will be free to leave immediately.
Good. Then I shall be away in time for afternoon tea. Some small consolation, at least.
Let us not hold up Mr. Graydon any longer than necessary, counsel. Proceed with the cross-examination.
So, we meet again, Mr. Edgar Benedict. Or is it Mr. Graydon? My apologies. You are... Ryunosuke Naruhodo, defense lawyer. We have met. If you say so. Ashley Graydon. Enchanté. You know, you can lie that you didn't see him, but Gregson will confirm that we were all there. So... He's going through the hat! Free hat! Ah! I trust we can conclude this quickly. God, he's so handsome. Ugh, but I'm not holding your flashy hat while we do. He's such a handsome man. The accusation.
Hold it!
Yes, we even met in the very pawnbrokery where the crime took place on the afternoon of the day in question. Though, of course, you introduced yourself by a different name at the time. It was Mr. Edgar Benedict, I believe. Tell me, what made you...
Objection!
The witness is here to testify about events that took place that night. I mean, don't you find it a little suspicious he hid his name, sir? He is under no obligation to answer such unrelated question. What if it is related? Shut up! You can't be serious. Thank you, because I certainly do not feel inclined to answer such an inappropriate question. Oh, shush. So he's going to just be evasive, is he? In an effort not to give anything away. This could be tricky. Rude! I want to know! Why specifically that name you came up with? Have you seen these two men before? This pair? No, I don't associate with criminals. Said by a man who introduced himself as Edgar Benedict. I'd like to know who I have to thank for this. Who made this outlandish accusation against me? The young lawyer there in the black. This is a farce. Whose idea was it to permit an outsider to work in a British court anyway? They're both looking at him, and it's kinda sus. It's a little creepy too, actually. Well, needless to say.
Hold it!
Where were you at around 1 in the morning on the night in question, sir? That is past the hour at which I would normally retire. Certainly. I was not in the company of these rapscallions. You're able to prove that.
Objection!
Listen carefully, my learned Nipponese friend, for you appear to be under a gross misapprehension on this point. What do you mean? The witness maintains he was not at the scene of the crime. He has no obligation to prove his absence. If your accusation is that the witness was present at the scene, the obligation lies with you to prove your assertion. Great. You will fulfill that obligation before putting any more unreasonable questions to the witness. A silent victory wiggle. Thanks.
Hold it!
Blood was found at the scene of the crime. There's no question of that. Mr. Sholmes' chemical analysis has positively identified the substance as such. But I am not the only human to have blood running through my veins, am I? Nope, he's not looking at them. It's just these two looking at him. It's really... it's so creepy. How can you be sure that the blood is mine? It could equally be the blood of one of these two miscreants. Okay, but they don't have any wounds on them. Every individual's blood has a slightly different composition, it seems. Mr. Sholmes' chemical is able to differentiate different... Spare me the science lesson. Who is this Sholmes character anyway? Oh, I assume no Londoners know the name. He's a a renowned detective. So even you are unable to bring yourself to say great detective. A great detective, you say? Tisk. Now we're in the realm of fairy tales, are we? The counsel for the defense thinks a British courtroom is an appropriate place for fairy tales, does he?
Oh, this is so unfair! That chemical test is based on solid science. Hurley and I know what we're doing.
The trouble is, unless the technique can be independently verified, We'll never get beyond this man's flashy waving sticky thingy. Granted, it is a very colorful alchemy. Perhaps it would make a good souvenir for your uneducated friends back home in the East. Ooh! Something riled in there. Just for a moment, Mr. Graydon let his feathers get ruffled. But a souvenir is all it's good for. Sir.
Hold it!
Don't forget, sir, that Mr. Herlock Sholmes is the most famous detective in the world. And the most famous detective in the world tells the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Oh no, I can't think how to answer that. I once saw the world's most famous swindler thrown into jail. He allegedly told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but what turned out to be a pack of lies. Ugh. Quite. Now, as you are no doubt aware, the Central Communication Station is the heart of this country's information network. My work there is of paramount importance, and you have kept me from it for long enough already. You made the clip. That's all he's going to say on the matter, is it?
What do you think, Bruno?
I think he has no intention of telling us anything. He's well aware that the less he says, the less chance he has of giving himself away.
The complete opposite of Harry, then. He seems to think that the more he says, the better.
I need to find a way of getting more information out of this man somehow. But compared to the bungling burglars beside him, he seems as innocent as a child.
Or perhaps the Skulkin brothers might be the key here.
Oh, could they be somehow?
Remember, if you don't prove this witness was some connection to the incident here, he'll be free to leave.
I know. I can't let that happen. Let's listen to those statements again and see if there's any way I can make one of them tell us more.
Hold it!
I think it was this one that had the pursue. Hello, sir.
Excuse me.
Did you have something to say about that, Mr. Skulkin? Hey, what? Me? No, the Mr. Skulkin next to you.
Right, I've had it up to here with this. How many times have I got to tell you?
Yes, I know. You're not Big Bruv Skulky. Sulky. Mr. Nash Skulkin.
Cool, blimey, governor. You what?
Is it not the case that when Mr. Graydon just spoke, a thought went through your mind? Would you care to share that thought with the court?
Me thoughts? I don't have none of them. Must have been him. You what?
Mr. Nash Skulkin, answer the question, please. What went through your mind when Mr. Graydon just spoke?
Nothing. Honest, Gov, nothing. I was just thinking, if he waves his arm around like that much more, it'll open the wound again, that's all.
Oh! What wound?
Well, he took the bullet, of course. It was only 2 days ago. It ain't gonna be sealed up yet. So I was, well, you know, I was worrying for him and,
Nash?
Oh, elves bells.
Mr. Graydon, did you hear that?
Oh?
What? Your comrade is worried about you, it seems. On account of your injured arm. My lord.
Yes, Mr. Graydon.
I have no idea what these two wretches are talking about. Certainly, I shouldn't be expected to answer anything in relation to their mindless insinuations.
Oh man, they're just worried about you, buddy.
We know that someone other than the victim was hit by a bullet at the scene of the crime 2 nights ago. And from the height of the bullet hole in the wall, that person was likely hit in the upper arm or thereabouts. Perhaps you'll allow court officials to examine your arm, sir. The left arm that you're currently clasping with your right hand, as if in pain. No, I refuse. Bro, could you get this guy examined, please? You have shown no evidence whatsoever that links me to these common thieves. Accordingly, I am not obliged to permit any such invasion of my privacy. What are you, Varn Karma now? As I've already said, I'm completely uninvolved in all this. I've never had anything to do with the pawnbrokery where this fellow was killed whatsoever. I take offense at the insinuation that I was in any way involved.
You claim to have had nothing whatsoever to do with Mr. Windybake's pawnbrokery.
My lord, the defense would like that last statement to be added to Mr. Grayman's formal testimony. I gotta present something here.
Very well, counsel. Continue with your testimony, Mr. Graydon.
The bottom line is, I never had anything to do with the pawnbroking establishment when the man was killed. That's a lie. You were there. Gregson can confirm if you're not gonna listen to me.
Hold it!
But here, we'll keep talking. Never had anything to do with it. You forgot that I was there, Mr. Graydon, on the very afternoon of the incident. Obviously, I am not a complete stranger to the pawnbrokers. I'm currently on the lookout for an armchair to furnish my study.
Objection!
No, you are there to redeem an article. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry? You must be confusing me with somebody else. I wasn't there for any such purpose. Buddy, I have a disc and I'm going to present it to you, but the redemption ticket.
That won't get you anywhere, Runo.
Iris, what do you mean?
Mr. Windybeck never wrote the names of his customers on his redemption tickets. So you can't prove the ticket was his.
Oh, of course. She's right.
I'm afraid you're going to need to produce some irrefutable evidence here. Otherwise, he'll never admit to being there.
Irrefutable evidence. Oh, whoops, there's new dialogue.
It's a good time to have a proper look through the court record.
Well, I don't hate it. I just wish they did more with it. We get a prelude of the Pursuit music, but I kind of wish they gave us a new Pursuit music in the second game, but that's just me. It's fine. I like it. I just wish they made another one, just to give it a little bit more variety.
Hold it! Objection!
Oh, really?
Is that right?
I like it.
Excuse me.
I mean, he could be saying hang on from Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney again. I'd much prefer excuse me over hang on. Do you have something to add, Inspector? Eh? Come again, Sunshine? You were there too, in fact, weren't you, Inspector? That afternoon. Well, yes, I do remember meeting yourself and the pawnbrokers that afternoon. You, your young Japanese assistant, and the accused were all present, as I recalled. And at that time, this witness, Mr. Graydon, was trying to acquire a particular article. Well now. I'm afraid I don't remember too clearly. It's the disc! Thanks, Gregson. The reason why you're not telling me is because it's the disc. What? But you must. I'm not going to lie and pretend I remember something I don't. You just did! What's going on here?
Gregsy showed us a picture before, didn't he? You know, from the cameras that Hurley installed in Windybanks.
Yes, of course.
Indeed, and the gentleman pictured bears a striking resemblance to the witness, I must say.
Exactly, which proves that Mr. Graydon was in the shop on the afternoon in question. At no point have I denied that fact. I merely enter the shop to peruse the articles on sale and have a word with the broker. Nothing more. Gregson! Gregson, please! This makes no sense. I understand why Mr. Graydon might be trying to cover his tracks. But why would Gregson be trying to avoid giving testimony about what happened?
The complete opposite of Hurley, then. He seems to think that the more he says, the better.
Well, at least I managed to prise a little more information from these witnesses' lips. All thanks to the Skokin brothers.
Yes, they were the key to it after all.
Now he says he had nothing to do with Windybanks. Well, we know that's not true.
Perhaps now would be a good time to have a proper look through the court record.
Good idea. You never know what tiny scrap of information could become a valuable weapon. Sir, take a look at this thing that Gregson clearly does not want to talk about.
Objection.
So, Gregson, if you're gonna keep doing secrets here, we're just gonna keep presenting this disc that you really hate being presented around. Have you ever seen this disc before, Mr. Graydon? Why? Is it supposed to mean something? This disc was, until the day of his murder, in pawn in Mr. Windybank's shop. It was redeemed by the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, that afternoon. However, somebody mysteriously appeared to try to take it from her. Buddy, there's blood on this too. And that somebody was you, of course. Was it, Mr. Graydon? As I have reiterated numerous times now, you are mistaken. That was not me. I've never seen that disc before in my life. It may have escaped your notice, but there is a small smear of blood on the disc.
Ah, yes, resulting from an abrasion of the thumb, perhaps.
That's right. The surface of the disc is covered in hundreds of tiny metal bumps. In the skirmish to acquire the disc, the thumb of the person who tried to take it suffered minor lacerations. So, while the disc bears the remnants of that skirmish in the form of this smear of blood, the thumb of the person in question must bear the remnant also, in a form of a scratch.
Good gracious, indeed it must.
Mr. Graydon, you refused to allow a court officer to examine your arm before. Are you now going to refuse to allow us to examine your thumb? Because I have no doubt that it bears a small scratch consistent with a smear of blood on this disc. Well. It would seem I underestimated you.
What is the meaning of this?
So you admit it now. You admit you have a scratch on your thumb from when you attempted to take the disc from the defendant. Rubber.
Order! Well, Mr. Graydon?
It would appear there has been something of a misunderstanding here. I did not attempt to take the disc, as you put it. No, quite the reverse. What are you trying to say? It's really quite simple, you see. The disc was mine from the outset. Is there some crime in taking an item that you owe out of pawn? I know where we need to pursue where you don't see anything. You have to pursue, though. That's the thing. It's not optional. I think someone in here said it was optional, but it's not. What? It would seem, Mr. Graydon, that in this piece of evidence, my learned friend has established a link between yourself and the incident. Accordingly, you will tell the court everything you know about this disc now. As you wish. Though I'm quite sure it has nothing whatsoever to do with the pawnbroker's murder. Gregson is probably like twitching over there because now we're talking about the disc. There's a note on the disc saying for McGilded, but the item belongs to me. The redemption ticket was stolen from me by the accused, that filthy gutterling, on the day in question. I proceeded at once to the shop in order to explain my situation and redeem my article. In the end, of course, the disc was taken by the police. Oh, look, they're not They're not looking at him. Or do they only look while I'm... Okay, never mind. In other words, I had absolutely no reason to break into the shop later that night.
Did I hear you correctly, sir? McGilded, you say? The famous London philanthropist? Who perished in this very courtroom 2 months ago after being acquitted of a distinctly messy murder.
Yes, my lord. The one and the same.
Good lord, Mr. Graydon. Are you saying that Mr. McGilded and yourself were acquainted?
Yes, that's correct. Whisper, 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 whisper.
Order! Well, I certainly didn't expect to hear that name uttered here in my courtroom again.
According to what Gina told us, this disc was placed in pawn on that fateful night 2 months ago. McGilded himself gave instructions to deposit it at Windy Bank.
It's funny that Mr. Graydon here is claiming the disc belongs to him, then, isn't it?
In all likelihood, he's lying. So he appeared that afternoon at Windy Banks in order to get his hands on McGilded's disc for some reason.
Counsel, you will commence your cross-examination, please.
Yum. We shall now press this guy, as I stretch and get a drink of water.
Hold it!
Would you care to explain how this belongs to you? So, they're no longer looking. So you notice that they're no longer looking at him. So I guess they were looking at him because they were worried about his arm. Now they're not. Gregson, how you doing, buddy? They're talking about the disc. As you will observe, a communications officer such as myself commands a fine salary.
You are currently exquisitely dressed, sir.
So you see, I have little need to make use of the services provided by the pawnbrokery trade. However, I did once find myself in difficulties having misplaced my purse while on an errand. Which is why I pawned my fine black overcoat to the broker in question. You claimed that was your overcoat. Obviously, and in my haste I clean forgot that the music box disc was in its pocket. And yet, there is a note on it that reads for McGilded. I am a collector of rare and unusual music box music. I first met Mr. McGilded at a gentleman's club in the city and was interested to discover that he shared my penchant in that area.
So, the disc in question
Is a pre-production sample. I promised to let Mr. McGilded hear it. But then you forgot that it was in the pocket of the overcoat you were forced to pawn. Yes, exactly.
Gina didn't mention any of that in her testimony 2 months ago, did she?
No, because McGilded had threatened her to keep her mouth shut. Which means that if we dig too deeply here, it's going to expose Gina's perjury. I don't think we have a choice.
Oh dear. This is complicated, isn't it?
Let's leave it alone for the time being.
Hold it!
So you're saying that Miss Lestrade lifted the ticket from your pocket or bag? That's right, despite being mindful of danger when walking in the insalubrious areas her kind frequent.
Objection!
Miss Lestrade did no such thing. Well, of course you would take that stance, but the girl is a regular offender. You came to the pawnbrokery that day prepared with all the information you needed to identify the defendant. You were looking for her. That's what brought you to Windy Banks. To get your hands on Mr. McGilded's disc.
Objection!
My learned friend is a veritable font of nonsense. Nonsense?
I concur with the prosecution. Counsel, you will refrain from conjecturing in this way. Is that clear?
I mean, it's true what happened, we just don't have anything to prove it, unfortunately, Naruhodo. Yes, my lord. Also, tell Baroque to stop conjecturing then! Then I will continue with my testimony with what possible use it can be.
Hold it!
Had you ever been to Winniebake's before? Only once, for the purposes of pawning something. But like many, I enjoy browsing in such establishments. So when you noticed that the pickpocket had taken your ticket, you chased after her. Is that correct? Yes, that's right. I didn't notice at first, of course. Such is the art of the pick-purse. But when I did, I headed to the pawnbrokery at once, in order to reclaim my coat before the thief could. I was merely trying to recover what was rightfully mine in the first place. Ugh. He can say what he likes because he knows we have no evidence to contradict him on this. We should have taken that paper during the dance of deduction.
Hold it!
Yes, it was taken by Inspector Gregson here, wasn't it? That's right. This was the very man. Apparently the police are collecting anything that has a connection to Mr. McGilded as evidence. Hello, sir! That's what the inspector said, at least as he seized my disc. And thanks to the skirmish with that wastrel, I snagged the end of my thumb at the same time. And the disc in question is this disc here. Yes, it is. Scotland Yard have indeed been gathering items believed to have been the property of McGilded, presumably to aid their investigations in some way. Not something I would be aware of. I really didn't know the man well, anyway. After all, I'm merely a communication officer with a penchant for music boxes. And flamboyant poses.
Hold it!
But perhaps you'd seen something of value among the forfeited items. No, not at all. Oh? A valuer was brought in by the police to assess everything in the shop. Without exception, every article on the shelves was common or garden bric-a-brac. In that case, it's clear that you broke into the shop later that day in order to recover Mr. McGild's disc. Have you not been listening, man? Even if I had wanted to recover the disc, you may recall that it had been seized by the police that afternoon. You know, I think Potency and this guy, I think these guys were the first ones to get mocapped, at least, if I remember correctly. Mr. Graydon in particular is mocapped by an actual performer. She used to be part of an all-female troupe, and the name is escaping me right now. But they did do a show, a play, an Ace Attorney play, with all-female cast. Like a Miles Edgeworth tied one. They also did a lot of Sailor Moon ones, if I remembered. Yep, that's it, thank you. She was retired by this point, I believe, when she did, the mocapping for Mr. Graydon. And she ended up doing mocap for Baroque, and I guess a couple other characters. It was no more in the shop that night than I. As I keep saying, I simply had no reason to break in. So there was nothing of McGilded's left in the shop that night. Nothing this man might have been after. I wonder if that's really true. I think not.
You know, if you have some evidence, then let him have it. I'm dying to see that irritatingly assured expression of his crumble.
Me too. McGilded slipped the disc into his coat pocket and had it deposited at Windybank's. Then, when he realized he was going to be arrested on suspicion of the omnibus murder, he threatened Gina and forced her to take the redemption ticket. Oh, cool. I haven't been watching the Olympics, but that's cool.
There's no doubt about it. That witness is lying through his pearly white teeth.
The police were obviously after anything left behind by McGilded as well. That's why Inspector Gregson ended up taking the disc into custody that day.
But Gregsy being very strange about all this.
There must be a reason for that, I'm sure. I just don't know what it is. For now, I need to focus on exposing the fact that Mr. Graydon is lying in his testimony. Right, well, first, we need to get to Gregson.
Hold it!
I know we need to present one of the redemption stuff, too, so...
Is that right?
Hello, sir!
Excuse me.
Is something wrong, Inspector? What you mean? The last remark Mr. Graydon made in his testimony seemed to trouble you in some way. No, it didn't. It's nothing. Leave it alone. Let me ask you this, Inspector. Why is Scotland Yard gathering McGilded's possessions?
I can't tell you something like that, Sunshine.
What is it, Inspector? Investigative secrets?
Yes, exactly. You should know all about that.
Magnus McGilded, who died so unexpectedly after his trial 2 months ago. A man renowned throughout the capital for his great contributions to public life. Yet he had a dark side, too.
Where are you going with this, Van Zieks?
I suppose the police are dealing with the aftermath of his nefarious activities, are they?
That's enough. Coppers like me have duties to carry out that we're not at liberty to talk about. That's all you need to know.
You know, I wonder if Baroque already suspected Gregson at this point. Duties conferred by Lord Strongheart, I presume. The Lord Chief Justice appears to have great faith in you, Inspector. I really think he suspects him already, this early on.
The bottom line is, if you want to get more out of me, you're going to need Lord Strongheart's paw print first.
Paw print? What's all this about? It's like there's something going on between Gregson and Lord Van Zieks here.
Well, it would appear that the inspector has revealed all he is at liberty to reveal. Mr. Graydon, let us return to your testimony.
Gladly, my lord. Oh, well, I have something I can present here. Which one is it? Is it this one? Yeah, that looks like it. It's definitely not this one, so...
Objection!
This disc was deposited at Windy Banks on Magnus McGilded's instructions. You knew that, and you went there with the intention of taming it yourself.
Objection!
Conjecture again, and in any case, the disc was taken into custody by the police that afternoon. The witness had no reason to visit the pawnbrokery again that night. Sir, would you read this redemption ticket before you yell at me? Sorry, my learned friend. That's not true. Every time Naruto says my learned friend, it throws me off. What? Mr. McGilded had another article in pawn at Windy Banks. As this second pawnbroker's ticket proves. There were 2 articles belonging to Mr. McGilded in Windy Banks pawnbrokery. And the reason you broke into the shop that night was to recover the second one. I've already pressed that statement, all of them. Together with your 2 accomplices, the Skulkin brothers.
This is the second ticket, is it?
What had the man deposited? The article description reads, 1 small box.
A rather vague description, it seems to me.
Are you suggesting that I broke into pawnbroking with these clowns in order to steal some trinket box? I believe there are adequate grounds to suspect that you did. This is absurd. Why on earth would I do such a thing? Once the article had been forfeited, I could simply walk into the shop and purchase it. There would be absolutely no need for me to resort to theft. That's a good point.
Indeed. The witnesses makes a solid argument.
So that means that for some reason, this Graydon fellow need the small box that very night, does it?
Objection!
It's time to put an end to this nonsense, my lord.
Could you be a little less cryptic, Lord Van Zieks?
I do hate to ruin my learned friend's argument, but the truth is quite incontrovertible. On the night in question, no small box was taken from Windy Bank's pawnbrokery. And rest assured, the prosecution can prove it. What?
Good gracious.
Inspector, show the photographic prints to the court, if you please.
Yes, sir.
What prints?
These prints were taken from one of the detective's security cameras.
Harry's red-handed recorders again.
As previously explained using this plan of the shop layout. The victim's establishment was furnished with automatic cameras in 2 locations. One was set to capture the counter where Mr. Winnybeg received his customers, and the other was set to capture the shelves on which articles were placed for sale once forfeited. Where about the shelves behind the camera?
According to the information on this ticket, the gilded small box had been forfeited already, 2 days before the incident, at 9 p.m. on 13th April to be precise, which means it would have been on the shelves of forfeited items in the shop front. Now, what I have here is a print taken by one of the cameras about 2 hours before the incident. That's at 11 p.m. at 15th April. The victim certainly had a very full shop, it would appear. And then here we have another print.
Oh God, I don't know if it's because I know already or not, but they made it's very obvious what moved.
This one was taken about 2 hours after the incident. I see. So we have 2 pictures to compare.
Oh, it's really obvious. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it was obvious in the 3DS version or not, but you can really tell.
Now I must say that placing them side by side leaves me cold. Dear me, that's starting to make my head ache. Obviously, at Scotland Yard, we consider theft as one possible motive in this case. We explore the possibility that something had been taken in addition to the victim's life. So your men have already compared these 2 prints thoroughly, Inspector?
Yes, sir.
Did you really? We counted every single item in each of these 2 photographic prints. And the Yard's conclusion is that exactly the same number are present in both.
In other words, nothing was taken from the pawnbrokery on the night in question, and my learned friend's assertion is nothing more than a hopeful fantasy.
Ah!
I don't believe it. If I could have just shown he'd stolen McGilded's pawn box. Oh yeah, you're gonna do your strutting. I might have been able to break him down at last.
You know what, Bruno? I've been thinking. I wonder if these 2 photographs really are exactly the same.
What?
So, counsel, in the light of the evidence put forward by the prosecution, what is your position as I take a drink? It seems that, in fact, on the night in question, nothing was stolen from the victim's establishment. Do you accept the prosecution's assertion?
I don't know. Could there be some hidden discrepancy in these 2 photographic prints somewhere? I wasn't sure at first, but there is a clear discrepancy between these 2 prints. What?
You must identify the location in question for the court, counsel. Indicate the precise location of the discrepancy of which you speak.
Take that!
Granted, these 2 prints are almost identical. However, there is one minor discrepancy between them.
What?
When you view 2 pictures stereoscopically, that slow zoom in on the HD, a single area stands out as being different. The location of this small box. Let me... wait. Unbelievable. Take a picture. Got him!
By Jove, you're right. How extraordinary.
What this tells us is very simple. Mr. McGilded's small box was indeed not stolen from Winniebanks on the night in question. However, there can be no doubt that somebody picked up this particular box and then returned it to its place on the shelves.
Are you suggesting that small box originally deposited by Mr. McGilded is in fact...
Yes, the very same small box I just identified in those photographic prints.
Objection!
Mindless guesswork. What if it was? So a box was moved on the shelf. Nothing was stolen. Which means quite simply that nothing has changed. That may be true, but... Alright, McGilded's box wasn't stolen then. But doesn't the fact that it was moved like that change things? I'm just picking it changes everything, but I actually don't know what's about to happen. I believe this changes everything about the case. How can that possibly be? The crucial point is the fact that what was moved was a small box. In other words, we have to consider what might have been inside that box. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we need to examine that box as soon as possible. A vital piece of evidence is sitting on the shelves at Winniebanks as we speak.
Objection!
That won't be necessary. Some little box belonging to a man who died 2 months ago can't possibly be relevant to this trial.
The court does not uphold your objection, Lord Van Zeeks. Bailiff, arrange for an officer to go to Baker Street at once. Obtain the small box in question and bring it back here for further examination.
I'm gonna make Graydon and Gregson sweat. They're gonna be sweating. Is this a to be continue? Hi, sir. We're getting the box, whether you like it or not. Deal with it.
We should have a report within half an hour. I think perhaps we should recess for a short while until the evidence is brought forth.
To be hoodwinked by such a farce. Disappointing.
I beg your pardon, Lord Van Zeeks?
This is nothing but a smokescreen. A Nipponese specialty, it would seem. What are you trying to say? My learned friend has persisted with the same line of reasoning from the very beginning. That this witness's intent was to steal an article belonging to Mr. McGilded from the pawnbrokery. Yet common sense tells us that none of the articles have value enough to be worth stealing in the first place. Exactly. It would be beyond absurd to break into a place for the purpose of stealing such commonplace property. I mean, the more you insisted, the more I feel like it's not commonplace or bric-a-brac, sir. If your lordship recalls, Mr. McGilded perished 2 months ago, immediately after the conclusion of his trial. A trial in which he was found not guilty. A trial in which it was established he was the upstanding member of society his reputation implied, in fact. So I propose a toast to my learned friend and his most insightful defense. Ooh. Naruhodo, I think you're gonna have to come open. You might have to come clean. The articles this upstanding member of society pawned were entirely ordinary. A black overcoat that just happened to have a music box disc in one of its pockets, and a small box. I assure you I wouldn't accept even if the man tried to make a gift of such things to me. You know, that does make rather a lot of sense.
It's not as if it's as gold or jewels, is it? Though goodness knows Mr. McGilded was rich enough.
But you can't deposit a cash at a pawnbrokery.
The prosecution's argument is undeniably compelling.
It is incumbent on the defense now to bolster its argument. To explain what possible significance this commonplace article pawned by the citizen could have.
Well, counsel, is your argument in fact demonstrable?
Yes?
Are you able to show proof that the disc or the box are in any tangible way related to this case?
Well,
What's the matter, Runo? We know that they're related, don't we? They're both vital pieces of evidence.
yes, of course. You and I both know that. We know McGilded's true character, and we know the disc is significant, even if we don't know why. But if we explain all that to the court at this point, we'll have to acknowledge that McGilded's acquittal 2 months ago was a mistake. That the defense argument was flawed, based on false information.
Oh no!
And that would mean admitting that Gina committed perjury.
But Jeannie...
Could it be that Van Zieks knows? Is that why he's doing this now? Because he anticipated everything.
But maybe... this could be a great opportunity for us.
Sorry? What do you mean, Iris?
Well, what is it that you always say, Runo? Sooner or later, the truth comes out. Every time.
Alright. The exact significance of the things that McGilded deposited with Mr. Windybank is something that only Gina can explain to the court. But if I put her on the stand to testify about that, it could critically damage our chances of winning this case. Me too. What's the right thing to do here? Have Gina testify. My lord, the defense would like to make a proposal.
Oh? What proposal, counsel?
While the court awaits the arrival of Mr. McGilded's small box, I would like to call the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, to the witness stand.
The defendant? To what end?
It's to do with the various articles deposited at Windybanks by McGilded, my lord. Miss Lestrade has information relating to them. I believe it would be beneficial for the court to hear what she has to say. It will prove the significance of the articles in question once and for all. Well, well. Things are becoming interesting. I presume you've considered the implication of the testimony you're proposing. In particular, the impact it will have on the accused standing, and indeed your own. I have.
Lord Van Zieks, would you care to explain that last remark?
The prosecution accepts the defense's proposal. I move to interrupt the cross-examination of the current witnesses and hear from the accused herself.
Very well, if you have no objection. So, the court will now hear the testimony of the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade. Your witnesses, currently in the stand, may step down until further notice.
Then I shall bid you good day. Wait. You, sir, shall remain in the stand while Miss Lestrade testifies. As you wish. All right, then. Gina, it's time. I know this will be hard, but please, put your faith in me here.
Good luck, Runo.
The articles that Mr. McGilded had deposited in Windybank's pawnbrokery are intimately related with the omnibus case, the trial of which was heard in this courtroom 2 months ago.
Yes, and I remember this young lady being brought before me in that trial as well.
That's right, my lord. Her testimony helped to establish the innocence of the defendant, Mr. McGilded. The omnibus case was intriguing, to say the least. And now here we all are again, the same players in that trial facing each other once more. A twist of fate, perhaps, my Nipponese friend. Oh my god, Naruhodo picks a great time to breathe because I need to breathe. Allow me to recap the events of 2 months ago. An old brickmaker was stabbed to death in an omnibus running along London's winter streets. Apart from the victim, there was only one other person in the carriage, Mr. McGilded. Naturally, he was the prime suspect for the murder. But as the trial progressed, another possibility emerged. That the murder in fact took place above the defendant's head on the roof deck, with the body then being dropped through the skylight into the carriage below. It was Miss Lestrade whose testimony brought that possibility to light. At the time of the incident, Miss Lestrade was concealed under a seat in the carriage, hoping to pick the pockets of unsuspecting passengers. Then immediately after the trial, having been acquitted of the murder, Mr. McGillick died in this very courtroom in the most extraordinary of circumstances. A mystery that remains unsolved even now, 2 months on, as indeed does the omnibus murder itself.
Be that as it may, I recall neither the disc nor this small box being mentioned in the course of those proceedings.
Miss Lestrade, would you tell the court now, please, what really happened in the omnibus 2 months ago, I mean? I don't know what you mean. I already said all of what I know. And what about everything you told us yesterday from inside your prison cell? Please, Miss Lestrade, this is extremely important. And I'm sorry, but... Remember, little girl, if it transpires that you willfully withheld information in the trial 2 months ago, the Home Office will seek to prosecute you for perjury. And naturally, you will lose all credibility as a witness. Although, let's face facts, you have little credibility to lose.
Jeannie, don't listen to him. Please, you have to trust Runo now. Iris, we're on your side.
All right, then. I'll talk. It's the right choice, Gina. Well, it would seem that my learned friend is hell-bent on bringing the entire courtroom down about his ears. So be it.
I must confess that I'm struggling to understand what on earth is happening here. However, it would appear that Mr. McGilder's pawn articles in that extraordinary case of the omnibus harbor secrets of which we have been hitherto unaware. So, Miss Lestrade, you will now give your testimony before the court about the events of 2 months ago. You will reveal the truth and comity sorely lacking in your original statement.
This is it, then. Everything's going to come out. Like Van Ziek said, this could bring the whole courtroom down about my ears. But as a lawyer, I'm prepared to take that risk. My boy has grown up so much since that third case, my God. Oh, bless him. Bless him. The real truth of the omnibus case. Truth is, that Brickmaster Co. was in the cabin of the omnibus the whole time. When the Irishman dragged me out from under the seat, I saw that disc on the floor. All of a sudden, I heard a scream from over me head, and that pair on the roof deck went off to call the cops. That's when McGildy slipped the driver some tin to do a run to the pawn shop roundabout. He threatened me not to snitch, not to say nothing to no one about what I'd seen or heard. And of course, all of you are going to ignore that last part of her statement where she was threatened.
Good grief, this is outrageous. What if what you've just told the court bears no resemblance to your testimony 2 months ago?
As you say, my lord.
Then there's every chance I may have adjudicated an error in McGilder's trial. It sounds very much to me as if the man deliberately deceived this court in an effort to cover up the most wicked of schemes.
Without doubt, your lordship is correct. A great injustice was done in this courtroom 2 months ago. The actions of the accused in that trial of this witness and my learned friend are entirely inexcusable.
I don't believe it.
The whole trial was a farce. It's all lies.
That McGilder fellow was rotten to the core, just like that pickpocket.
Don't forget that lawyer from the east. They were all in it together.
You're wrong, the lot of you.
Mr. Naruhodo, the lawyer there, he did nothing about it. Humbug!
I don't think so. I really expected to believe that.
He really snitched everyone out, didn't he? What an operation to get the man off scot-free.
Unforgivable, stop. The lies have to stop. Stop.
Yes, the defense made a terrible error of judgment. I intend to take full responsibility and suffer whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. However, it's imperative that the court allows the witness to elaborate on her testimony, because the true significance of McGilded's Pond articles must be brought to light. Very well, my learned student friend. He added student. Given the depths of calamity you have just plunged yourself into, this may well be worth hearing.
Words fail me. The situation is utterly deplorable. Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, my lord.
I will decide upon your fate following the conclusion of this trial.
Of course, my lord. Blimey, Mr. Naruhodo.
Now, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
Hold it!
And you were hiding in the cabin at the time as well, weren't you, Miss Lestrade? If I remember rightly, in the storage compartment underneath one of the seats.
Yeah, that's right. It's pitch black under there, so you can't see nothing at all.
So, this is kind of important. You kind of need to pursue them. These two are up to something. This is the part where you need to pursue them, even though they're not doing anything.
Now, in your testimony 2 months ago, I feel certain that you claimed Mr. McGilded was the sole passenger, did you not?
False testimony, my lord. It's a shame they don't utilize this again, though. This thing here, these two collaborating right now. It's a shame they don't utilize this again at any other point in the game. I can't recall if they did this, where they're just subtly talking. There's no pursuing message to come up at all. You just have to notice it.
That's what he told me I had to say.
But it's important that you tell us the truth now. Were Mr. McGilded and the victim acquaintances?
I don't know. But I did hear him talking a lot.
What were they talking about?
Well, I couldn't hear too well, but if I had to say, I think it was about money or something. They kept talking about buying and not buying.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Can I push them? Is there something you'd like to share with the court, Inspector Gregson and Mr. Graydon? Inspector! Mr. Graydon!
Ah! Blimey, you're trying to give me a heart attack!
You have been whispering to each other for quite some time now. Tell us, what is the discussion about?
Discussion? With this fella?
Pull that other one, Sunshine. You think I got anything to talk about with a shady gent like this? And I have nothing to say to this uncouth detective after he deprived me of that disc that was rightfully mine. But they were clearly been talking the entire time in cross-examining Gina. It's as if they've been negotiating.
You will kindly refrain from talking amongst yourself while the witness is giving testimony. Yes, sorry, my lord.
What were those two talking about?
Miss Lestrade, continue with your testimony, please.
I'm going to repress that statement again. We didn't quite finish it.
Hold it!
Perhaps business dealings of some kind.
Well, anyway, they got louder and louder. It started to sound like a proper fight. I was pretty scared by then. I hardly dared to breathe. And then, all of a sudden,
I heard a noise like someone keeling over on the floor. It was blooming loud and all.
And I believe you let out an involuntary scream?
Yeah, that's what gave me away.
Hold it!
Was the disc you saw this disc? Yeah, I reckon it probably was. It was right next to the cove lying on the floor.
Could this dish have been belonged to the victim, perhaps?
I don't know, but McGilda picked it up pretty smartish. And then he sat with the cove with the knife in his belly up on the seat. What did he say to you at that time? He told me not to say a word about what I'd seen or heard to no one. About the disc and all. I was dead scared. The way he was looking at me, I thought, if I didn't go along with it, I'd get stuck with the knife too. Then he started asking me a load of questions, like what my name was and where I lived and all that. He asked me about being a diver too. But after a while, what happened in the carriage was noticed. Yeah, that's right. First there was a kind of rapping noise.
Hold it!
There were two gentlemen occupying the seats on the roof deck, I believe. That's right. They must have looked down through the skylight and noticed the cover with the knife in his guts. When they screamed, the driver pulled up the horses and McGilda got me right out of sight.
Out of sight? Where?
Back under the seat where I started off. Once the carriage came to a halt, the two coves from the roof ran off to fetch the cops. The cops? If they immediately left to fetch the police, it would appear they were entirely unrelated to the incident. So that left McGilda, the driver, and you still at the scene. Yeah, only the driver didn't know I was there because I was under the seat. I heard the cabin door open and a voice from outside.
The driver, yes. He also testified in the trial, I believe. A fellow who went by the name of Beppo, if memory serves.
What did McGilda and the driver say to each other? I don't know what had happened, and stuff like that, mainly.
Hold it!
That pawn shop obviously being Windybanks on Baker Street.
Just a moment, counsel. Do you mean to tell me that the driver gave false testimony in that trial as well?
Perhaps the excursion to the pawnbrokery slipped his mind when he was in the stand.
Indeed, Lord Van Seeks.
McGilda took off his coat and gave it to the driver. He folded it up, all careful-like, before handing it over. When I saw him do that, I remember thinking, that coat's and what's in it is got to be worth a few bob. Yes, Gina was sure the disc must be worth more than Mr. Windybank was suggesting, wasn't he? I remember her quibbing him over the price that afternoon at the pawnbrokery. The driver looked pretty happy when McGilda flashed some brass in his face. He went running off at a lick. Then the bog trotter called to me and told me to come out from the drag's cabin.
Hold it!
Threaten you how exactly? Told me I'd only be able to scalp if I did exactly what he said. Which included giving false testimony in court 2 months ago. Yeah, that's it. And there was one other thing he said. Which was? He told me I have to hang onto the ticket from the pawn shop and make sure not to lose it.
The ticket? Well, I'd never.
Said that if he didn't show up to get the ticket off me before 2 months passed, I had to go to the pawn shop and pay the money to keep it in lug, to stop it being forfeited. He left me with some brass to pay for it.
But really, why on earth would Mr. McGilda have done such a thing? Depositing his overcoat with the pawnbroker before the arrival of the police? It makes no sense at all.
There would seem to be only one logical explanation, my lord. What McGilda had the driver deposit at Windybanks was something he didn't want the police to see. Something very important that he needed to hide at all cost. Anyway, after that, he let me go. So I legged it after the coppers showed up.
Thank you, Miss Lestrade. Thank you, Counsel. I've heard enough. I believe we now have a reasonable understanding of what actually transpired on the omnibus.
It would appear on that night 2 months ago, a negotiation was taking place on the omnibus. A negotiation concerning this disc. However, matters did not run smoothly. When the parties involved began to quarrel over price, McGilded took what he wanted by force, and the expense of the other man's life at the expense. Which proves my point. The disc is clearly extremely valuable in some way, although I don't understand why as yet. And 2 days ago, precisely 2 months after the omnibus incident, McGilded's coat and its contents were due to be forfeited. I didn't know what I should do with the ticket. I mean, the cub died right after its trial. I knew that. So you decided you would try to claim the articles as your own?
Well, why not, eh? They were only going to be forfeited. Why shouldn't I have got them? Anyway, you can't blame me for thinking about it. Thinking ain't no crime.
Miss Lestrade, it would appear Mr. McGilded was prepared to kill in order to take possession of this disc. Do you know why that would be?
Huh? I ain't got a clue. But I reckon it must be worth a fair bit of brass. He was probably going to sell it. And you can't blame me for thinking that. Thinking ain't no crime.
My lord! The evidence your lordship requested has been located and is ready for the court's inspection, sir. Rubble, 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 rubble.
The mysterious little box, deposited by McGilded 2 months ago. There's no doubt in my mind that it's the key piece in this far-reaching puzzle. What indeed is in the box? We'll have to find out after I take a small break. We only an hour and 30 minutes in. I will take a 15-minute break, I say.